Welcome to Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. My name is Amber Ireland, and I'm here with my co-host, Jill Bucaro. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Guided by Third Wheel. Today, Amber and I thought we should talk about people-pleasing. It was weird. I've had like 4 people-pleasing conversations with people this week. Amber apparently journaled about people-pleasing this morning.
Yep.
I think, I don't want to speak for Amber, but I do know her pretty well, and I think it's safe to say that both of us are people pleasers, previous people pleasers,
right.
Trying not to people please so much these days. So I think that it is a very common and consistent issue. I think a lot of people struggle with people pleasing, probably particularly women struggle with people pleasing. So we thought we would unpack it a little bit today, maybe share a little bit about our journey. Why do we people please? Why shouldn't we people please? All of that good stuff. So Amber, do you want to maybe share a little bit about your people pleasing journey, or when you decided that people pleasing was no longer serving you?
I think I've gone through different layers of people-pleasing. I just kind of realized it this morning that I am also uncovering a new level of people-pleasing right now that I did not recognize necessarily as such until recently. But I think, it started off people-pleasing, right? So you want to keep everybody happy around you. Because if everybody's happy around you, then you're safe, then, you're loved, then there's no chance of rejection, those types of things. So when I was younger, even being like a small child, that people pleasing, where it's like just being agreeable, right? Being agreeable, not, don't cry too much, don't be too loud, don't be too needy, don't be too whiny.
Be okay if something bad happens, roll with the punches.
Right, right. And then as I got older, I started to realize that kind of stuff was bullshit. I was like, no, I don't have to go along with everything that everyone else wants to do. I can say no, I can set boundaries, and it'll be okay. And nobody's going to, it's not going to lead to immediate rejection or immediate, I don't like you anymore or whatever. And I had to work through that because, that first layer of it is really, kind of the first time that you're really setting boundaries with people that are close to you, especially. It's very easy to set a boundary with the stranger that you don't know.
Yes.
Right. That's like a first level. If you can do that, then now you're moving into, I have to set boundaries with people that I do know, that I do love, that are used to me people pleasing, and have to change that pattern. And so I started working on that and just setting boundaries with people within my family and saying no to things that I didn't want to do. Not always being available to solve everyone's problem, and being available to hold space, learning how to hold space without having to be the problem solver.
Yes. Taking that responsibility off of yourself.
Yes. Where it's oh yeah, that is, validating, this is a big deal. And also, it's not my job to fix it, right? I can say to you, this is a big deal. I can say to you, have you considered? But at the end of the day, I don't have to take it on as my own baggage to carry with me in order for you to not have to carry the baggage, right? Because that's sometimes what happens is you get in relation with someone else and you feel bad about what they're going through. And instead of talking through or holding space for them to solve their own problems so that they have that skill later on to use, you're let me take all of your baggage. Yes. I'll just carry that with mine.
Yes. You're really doing that person a disservice by solving everything for them. And we've talked about this in a previous podcast. Sometimes people aren't even asking you to solve it for them. But those of us that are so good at the people pleasing, we compulsively jump into that role of let me solve that for you. But yeah, number one, you're not giving them the opportunity to be the hero of their own story, and you're picking up shit that you do not need to carry, and they might not have wanted you to do any of it.
Yeah, but it makes them beholden to you. Ooh. And there is a piece there, right? If you're somebody that has a hard time with their own just innate self-worth, that if I make you beholden to me, then I will never be alone. You will always rely on me for X, Y, and Z because I am carrying your baggage. How are you going to go anywhere without your luggage? I have it all.
Oh, and I think that's a piece that we have to be really honest about with people pleasing, because we could paint the picture of people pleasing poor us, right?
Yeah,
we people please because we had to please to be safe, because we're spending too much time caring about other people and not caring about ourselves. And I think there is some truth to that, right? I think that's a piece of it. But I think the other piece that we don't want to talk about is that like power and control piece that you're talking about. There is, I mean, people pleasing is a bit of a power play for the first reason, like you said, because if you need me, you won't leave me. Right? And that's number one. And let me make sure that you need me at all times. And two, by constantly people pleasing, being who people want us to be, that makes it easier for us to control them too. And I think we have to think about that more like sinister, for lack of a better word, side to people pleasing. There is a big piece of people pleasing that is self-serving. It's like self-forgetting in some ways and self-serving in other ways.
Well, if you think about it, it was always self-serving. There just probably was a point in time where it was self-serving more for your safety because of your age, your ability to fully take care of yourself, right?
Right.
And so, the people pleasing of a child to adults, or in a situation where you don't have complete control over like your finances or where you live or whatever, there is always a safety piece there that we do that leads us to doing the people pleasing in the first place.
Sure.
It's just that when we pick that up and carry it along with us, it's almost I don't want to call it a skill, but it's I think it's a pattern that you've learned to use to get your needs met. So then when you feel like you might be abandoned or those old core wounds start bubbling up, you're like, I know what I can do.
Yes.
I will bend myself into whatever this person needs. And also by doing that, in my mind, they're beholden to me. And the bottom line is they never are.
Right, exactly. And I think you're using that people-pleasing skill in substitution of like a better skill, right? Which would be like healthy conflict, being able to confidently state your needs, being able to confidently say like, this is what I want, right? You're not doing any of that because you're just using the people-pleasing thing.
And with people-pleasing, I could see people saying, so are you saying that we should just never be nice to another human being, right? Like if all of that is people-pleasing and self-serving, then why would I ever be nice to anyone else? And that's not what I'm saying. You have to look at what you're doing and why you're doing it. And does this feel good to me to do something kind, compassionate, loving to someone else or for someone else? Am I coming from a heart-centered space where it's like, I'm going to do this for you with no expectation of what you're going to do for me? Or am I doing this for you because in some way it serves a different purpose for me around, safety, security, not being left alone, those types of things? Like, are you doing it to feed that core wound, or are you doing it from a place of an open heart compassion for that
and just
person?
Like loving on somebody, right? And I think it's also fair to say in that space, like sometimes we do things like truly and altruistically and compassionately for other people, and it makes us feel good, right? Like giving love in that way makes us feel good. But to your point, if you're checked in, if you're really looking deep down, you're going to know the difference, right? Was this fueled by anxiety, fear, or was this fueled by like, I have the ability and the means to like make somebody's day better?
Right.
And obviously, we want to capitalize on those moments of connection, right? And of being able to give or to be in service to others. And I think too, this was in one of the conversations I had this week, I think those of us who are people pleasers, like we need to give ourselves a little bit of a pat on the back because we are evolved to the point that we actually take time to consider other people, right?
Yeah.
There are some people that are not emotionally mature enough to think about how anything they do, how it affects other people.
Right.
Let's validate that piece, right? That you are evolved enough that you actually give a fuck about people around you and that you understand that your actions and the way you show up in the world impacts other people. I think that's huge. But again, you need to take that next step further, right, in your journey and your growth and think about, why am I doing this, right? And is this something truly that I need to do, or am I sacrificing my own comfort, my own mental health, my own safety to do this for somebody else?
I wonder, so this is something that I've kind of been thinking about, especially today, but just in general, and it goes along with people pleasing, but kind of in a different way. I find that sometimes what I do is I allow myself to, first off, everyone is the villain in somebody's story, right?
Yes.
Like you are, that is, and it's okay because, everybody needs a villain in their story, I guess. I'm sure I'm the villain. I know I'm the villain in a lot of people's stories, but sometimes I just go ahead and grab up all of that shame and guilt around being the villain. And I'm like, let me hold on to this.
Yes.
So that I can truly be the villain in your story, and that that I know that I'm the villain in your story, and somehow that's going to keep me tied to you, create a level of, forgiveness, or you're going to be like, oh, she knows she's the villain. She's been holding on to it so long. Maybe I should reconnect. And you know what I mean? Like,
almost like this martyr kind of complex, like some martyrdom here. Like, let me just lean into this villain so hard.
Yep. And let me just carry it.
And let me carry it. Because, again, it's a way that I can tether myself to you.
Right.
Because if I say I'm the villain, then I'm tied to you as the villain in your story.
Right.
As opposed to recognizing, we recognize that we are always going to be the villain at some point in our lives. But two, another thing I always say is we know that often, like, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. There are no people that, like, no story has a 100% villain and a 100% hero. But if you're like, oh, yes, I am the villain, look at me, 100% villain, then you're, again, robbing that person of accountability, of the ability to reflect on their actions, of the ability to just kind of process through that in a way that is healthy and that would allow them to grow.
Right. And you're taking on their perception. You're taking that on kind of in a way to validate for them something that maybe you don't need to hold on to.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm working through right now. I feel good about a boundary in general. I still do people pleasing. I have to remind myself. My kind of line in the sand is, are you doing this out of control? Like when you help someone, are you controlling the situation? And if I am, I'm people pleasing. That's what I'm doing. I'm people pleasing if I'm controlling the situation. Or am I doing this just truly from a place of I have a skill, I have something to offer you right now that's going to help you along your journey, but I don't really need to control your journey. I don't need to control the outcome of this in order to connect with you and hold space here.
Yeah, I feel totally cool with giving you this service, this information, this time, and I'm not really tied to what you're going to do with it.
Right.
Take it and go.
Right. Right. So that's kind of my line in the sand right now, is just that. And if I recognize that you're doing this and you are trying to control the outcome and you're trying to control what this person does and then that's, then I need to step back and say, why are you doing this? What are you afraid of? What are you afraid is going to happen here if you don't put in this level of control? Right?
Absolutely.
And that's about me, not about them.
Exactly. And to me, it's there's so much compulsion for me for people pleasing. It really feels like a compulsive kind of thing, to the point where I'm not thinking critically about that, right? I just, all of a sudden, I am an opportunity for people pleasing presents itself, right? And I am just it's my brain, the cortisol levels shoot up, right? My brain clicks off and I'm just back to 5-year-old Jill that's must please, right? Must keep everyone around me happy. And I think, like you said, if you give yourself that pause, which is something we talk about all the time here, right? Is the pause, the check-in, what am I really doing here? Why am I doing this? I think that's going to help you discern what's going on there. And I think the other piece of it too is just recognizing that we just have to start to unwind some of these old patterns, right? Yeah. And just understand, like you said, this is a behavior that served you in the past, but I think we also have to look at what types of people are socialized to please, right? I think women for sure are socialized to please. I think oldest children are socialized to please. I think mothers are socialized to please, right? I think there's all of these types of groups where we are told every day, right? We are programmed from the moment like our little brains can like begin to comprehend words, right? That our job is to take care of others, that our job is to make sure that everyone in the room is comfortable and okay, right? That our job is to sacrifice our own comfort for the comfort of someone else, right? Typically like men, right? Or like rich white men. And, you know, and it's interesting because I find myself doing that all the time. Like, I find it much easier to have healthy and thoughtful confrontation and like hard conversations with women. And I think that's easier for me because I was not socialized to protect women from discomfort. I was socialized to protect men from discomfort, right? Like I have a harder time having those conversations with men weird at work.
Because I am the opposite.
Really?
I'm trying to like tease this back to what that is, but I am the opposite. I have a harder time having those conversations with women.
Okay, so maybe it's not a socialization thing. Maybe it's just like a family of origin thing or something like that. But yeah, it used to be, my God, 6 years ago, it was hard for me to like stand up for myself to fucking anybody in the entire universe now, right? And I'm getting a lot better at that, or to say no to somebody. I find myself getting really anxious when I perceive that men, particularly men in power, are uncomfortable. And I truly think it's a safety thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that it resonates for me for family of origin. It feels more societal to me in general, but I think we have to think about that too. And maybe for each of us, just kind of deconstructing some of that socialization, right? Like whether it goes back to family of origin, whether it goes back to like, you know, crazy American culture or like a church that we grew up in, right? Or any of that stuff. What groups of people and types of people or what types of situations are we feeling the more compulsive need to please, protect, take on discomfort, manage and control the situation?
Yeah. If we're thinking about it by, you know, family of origin and childhood, and you said that you kind of grew up like it was, you know, we keep them in our family or in our sphere. We make sure that they're taken care of, that they are not uncomfortable. And so now for you, it's like when a man's uncomfortable, it's like that immediate like, oh no. I think for me, I think I do people pleasing with men. It doesn't cause me a lot of anxiety because I think I can do it better because I've had to do it so much. And so with women, I've not had to do that.
I find it hard too to draw lines and to draw boundaries with people who I know are also like hustling hard to take care of other people, which is often women, right? And I wonder if that's part of it too, where you're looking at a woman and you're like, my God, you're already carrying so much. I feel bad. You know what I mean?
Right.
Doing this. We really have to. And one of the things I wanted to talk about in here, because I think I can never ever say it enough, is just that realization that like I always say nobody gives a fuck about you but you. Nobody is going to put you first but you. And it literally took me like 30 whole years, like 3 fucking decades to just like realize that was never going to happen. Like I waited around for 30 years for somebody to like consider my feelings, consider what I wanted. And I never was willing to do that for myself, right? But I was just waiting around for somebody else to do it. And it's like, we have to recognize that we are the only ones that are going to consider our own shit. Maybe like in a beautiful, perfect world in life, you might run into 1 or 2 people on your journey, right? That are really like evolved enough, emotionally mature enough, right? To really think about and consider you.
Right.
But you might not run into those people.
Right.
And those people are not going to be around you all the time to like fucking field, you know, everything that's happening.
Because they're evolved enough to not.
Because they're not going to want to do that.
Your life. Yeah.
Yeah. But what I finally realized, like if I don't start putting myself first, I'm going to live a whole life where I never am considered.
Right.
Unless I consider myself.
If I never consider myself and I'm with someone who, you know, loves me and wants to do good for me, they never know what to consider because they don't see me considering myself.
Yes.
And so they're just bumbling around my morphing into whatever they want.
You're like smoke and mirrors. Like, it's too smoky and shiny that they can't even tell what you want.
Right. And so they're like, well, then I'll just do what I want because it seems like you're happy with whatever I want. Yes. Right. And so then they keep on that path. And then we get irritated because we're like, why does nobody love me? Why will nobody take notice? But you don't even know. So how do you expect somebody else to know? Like, I know now there are things that I do for myself to take care of myself that a lot of other people know. And so a lot of other people now, they honor that.
Yes.
And like if they're, gift giving or trying to spend time with me, they're like, oh, this is something Amber would enjoy. And so they, and that feels good because they are seeing me. But the reason they didn't see me before is because I wasn't showing anybody me.
Yes. I think that's so true. And I think it's like kind of like similar to that or adjacent to that. I think it's about the energy like that you put out into the world about yourself, right? Like if you are like, I am someone that I don't consider. Like I don't give a fuck what I want. I don't give a fuck what I need. I don't give a fuck about anything about me.
Right.
You are like just giving every single other person around you permission to not give a fuck about any of those things too. Right. But if you're putting out the energy that like I set aside time for myself to do this, right? Mm-hmm. I make sure that like, I don't know, like I eat healthy and exercise. I make sure that I take time before bed to read a book. Like I like long hot showers with like aromatherapy, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're putting out into the world like I am somebody that like deserves nice things, right? Mm-hmm. And deserves rest and relaxation and deserves time to recharge.
Right. And I'm going to do it for myself regardless if anybody else does it with me, for me, whatever.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, because if I'm going to treat myself like, a fucking doormat, everybody's going to treat me like a doormat.
And not because they're like trying to be mean or anything, but that's like the level of energy you're putting out. Mm-hmm. And you might get some like nice things here and there. Like you might have somebody come along and they're like, you deserve better than this, right? And they like are trying to get you there. But you don't even recognize it because you're like trying to people please them.
Right.
You're like, no, don't do nice things for me. Let me do nice things for you. Because if I don't do nice things for you, then you won't stay around. Mm-hmm. And, we just go back into that whole spiral of whatever that core wound was that we're trying to take care of. But we're taking care of it externally instead of internally. We are quite literally working our shit out on other people.
Right.
As opposed to working on it internally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what would you say to people who are like, I think I want to people please a little less? Mm-hmm. Like, what do you feel like are some of like the hot tips and tricks that people could do?
We say boundaries a lot. A lot of people say boundaries a lot. I feel like it's a buzzword. I feel like, people look at boundaries in a lot of different ways, but the answer is boundaries. But I just want to explain a little bit because I think sometimes people hear boundaries and they immediately think about like putting up walls or refusing to speak to people or cutting people completely out of your life. And though those are boundaries that sometimes we have to set in very, dire type of situations, those aren't generally the boundaries that you need. The boundaries that you need to start with are, I don't really like that activity, so I would prefer to not do it with you anymore, right? And to have that conversation and just say like, I really love that you love this. I don't really love it. Godspeed, go do the thing. I'll be, at home on the couch watching Netflix cheering for you because this is what I want to be doing right now, right? So I think that the thing is to set the boundary. And it could be something like, that every time this person calls you on the phone, it's going to be a crisis, right? And so instead of solving the problem, and this isn't even a boundary you have to like tell them you're setting.
Right, it's an internal. Some boundaries we don't have to tell people we're setting. They might not even know we're setting them.
Right, and you'll notice they do kind of know, but they don't understand what's happening, right? So if I'm somebody that's always going to solve the problem, and I decide one day, like, you know what? I know this person's going to call me. They're going to expect me to solve this problem. I'm going to practice today not solving the problem. I'm going to hold space for them.
I'm going to be kind to them.
I'm going to validate what's happening. I'm going to say that's really hard. I'm going to say, have you considered, like if I have something that I can offer, right? Like a resource, a nice word of wisdom, right? I'm going to say, have you considered? Mm-hmm. And then when the conversation's over, it's over. I'm not going to say, I'll make these phone calls for you as soon as we get off the phone.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go take care of this. I'll come over and I'll go to the store and get you this and bring it to you. You know, I'm not going to do that. No matter what happens, I'm not doing that. When this phone call is over, I am going to hang up the phone and say, your energy is yours and my energy is mine, and I'm going to be done. And I'm going to feel okay about it, right?
Yes.
And I think that sometimes is the boundary that we have to be able to set internally.
Yes.
And people will. Like, if you're somebody that always solves the problem, you'll notice that they're like, I can't really do that right now.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I know that you can. I know you can take care of this.
Yes. I think that's a big one. And I think too, like so many of us, I think like people please with our time, right? Mm-hmm. That we give and we give and we give until there's no time left for us. There's no time to do the things that we need to do to keep ourselves healthy and this and that. And I think like what you said with that is like, you're protecting your time, right? Mm-hmm. You're not totally cutting off communication or connection, which understanding that sometimes we do have to have boundaries like that, but hopefully most of the time we do not, right? But it's like, how do we preserve some of that time and some of that energy? And I think that's a huge one. I was thinking about when you said the first one, like, so one thing that my family likes to do sometimes, like when we have family in town around the holidays, is they like to go to like, there's this place called Clifton Mills, and you like walk around for 100 hours in the freezing cold and like look at Christmas lights. Right. And a fun fact about me, I don't understand why people think Christmas lights are cool. I think they're kind of dumb. Like, I don't find them to be like that pretty or exciting. And I fucking hate to be cold. Yes. I hate it. Yeah. I hate it so much. And it's like every year we would go walk around at Christmas lights. I would be upset the whole time. It takes like a half hour to get there, a half hour to get home. We're like schlepping around. My feet hurt. I'm freezing. My face hurts. Like, and I just hated it, right? But it's like, oh. And then one year, like I was feeling real crazy. It was not that long ago. They were all going to go. And I said, what if you guys all go do Christmas lights? I'll come over to my parents' house while you're gone, and I'll make hot chocolate for everyone. And then when you get back, like, hot chocolate will be there. I didn't have to sacrifice the connection, but I was able to save, 3 hours of my life and not do something I didn't want to do. Right. And believe it, do you think one person gave a fuck that I didn't go? No, they didn't care because they got to see me. But I mean, that was like monumental for me, right? And I think, so that was one thing I was thinking about. And I think the time piece is so important too, right? Like, if you know what you're going to do that day, like, don't let somebody derail it, right? There is a way to kindly say, oh my gosh, I wish I could go, or that sounds so fun, but not today. And I think that can really feel revolutionary for some people to just say like no to something. Yeah. And for me, I always know, like, when somebody, like, texts me or calls me or reaches out and is like, do you want to do something? Like, I'll either feel one of two things, right? I'll either feel like, oh, maybe, or I'll feel, like, just utter, like, dread and panic in my stomach. Just, like, somebody put, like, their hand around my throat. And if it feels like somebody put their hand around my throat, then I say no, right? But like, until a couple years ago, I still would have said yes. Then I would have been like, poor me, never a minute to myself, never time to do anything I wanted to do. But it's just like, if you don't want to do something, don't do it.
And do you find now that you've been able to do that more often that people are less demanding of your time? Yes. They ask. Yes. And they are okay with a no. Yes. Than when you first started doing it?
Yeah, it's always hard at first. I think it is a lot harder. You know, and I think people worry about things too. Like, well, if I say no all the time, like, no one will invite me to do anything anymore, right? Or if I, and I think there is some truth to that, right? Like, I do think that's true, but then it also, like, gives you the space to, like, initiate time with people, like, on your own terms, right? Like, you look ahead at your calendar for the next 3 weeks, and you're like, man, I have a Saturday morning open. Maybe I'd like to invite a friend for coffee, right? Or something like that, as opposed, because I think often people pleasers, we're kind of just like floating in the ocean, like taking whatever's coming our way. You know what I mean? Like, we're just fucking chilling, like letting life hit us in the face. Like, I really didn't plan things, right? Or I only planned things I thought other people would want to do. Whereas when you start to say no, you kind of like clear away the fray a little bit to be able to make like some actual like intentional like movement in your life.
I also think that when you do that. When you're like rolling with, I'm just taking whatever is being thrown at me without any discernment, we're still in that mindset of lack, right? Like, I'm not going to, like, this will dry up eventually if I don't take everything that's thrown at me. And when we can start setting those boundaries, we get more into this feeling of abundance and the fact that, like, no, connection is always available to me.
Yes.
And I can be discerning and take the connections that are good because I'm connected to myself.
And why wouldn't I want to clear some space and some chatter and some static to really be able to think critically about what kind of connection I want?
Right.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a huge piece. I'm trying to think if I would have any other tips or tricks for the people pleasing. Remember that nobody's going to put you first unless it's you putting you first. Be thoughtful about your time.
Right.
Compromise when you can.
Yeah. I think too with the putting people first, just kind of going back to that. I've gotten to a place in my life now. I used to be like, if I was in a relationship with somebody, I'm like, I am number one to you or I am nothing. Right? Like I would get in this place where I'm like, if you are putting anyone above me, then like I am not having that.
Oh, okay.
Like this is how this relationship is going to go. And I really thought that was like the right way, right? Because I'm like, I'm putting you first and you're putting me first. Like this is, this is what it's supposed to be. This is how you do it. Right? And now I'm at a place in my life where I'm like, I want you to be first. And I want to be first for me.
Yeah.
And then we can connect from that place, opposed to me putting you first and you putting me. Like, that doesn't work.
It doesn't make any sense, really.
No. No.
And it just really leads to, like, enmeshment and codependency and all sorts of things that we don't necessarily want in a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like, ideally, we would have, like, two, like, fully evolved, like, thoughtful humans, boundaried people, consciously engaging in a life together.
Right.
Not like some weird twisty.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people in relationships, they get in that place where it's like, I'm first to you, you're first to me. This is how we do things. Like we are this is what a solid relationship looks like.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I think that's true. I think that's true. And I think that's like a myth also, like a common one. But yeah, but how would you ever know what somebody needs better than them? That's just silly to think that.
You don't. And if they're not putting themselves first, they're never going to show you what they need either.
Yes.
So that you could like maybe, I don't know, like supplement that in some way. Or
ask about it.
Right. Or be
curious.
Yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, I think those are the biggies for sure. And I think also understanding like people pleasing is a journey, right? And sometimes we are going to find ourselves, in an unfortunate and unwelcome people-pleasing adventure, right? Like where our guard was down, we were stressed, we were overwhelmed, and we kind of got back in the old pattern. And it's just like understanding that is all part of the journey. Like I think it would be very silly for me to sit here and think like I am all done with people-pleasing.
Oh, I'm not done.
I'm not done at all. So I think that just understanding that, recognizing that, and being able to course correct. Right. When we can. And really, like you said at the beginning, like thinking about why am I doing this? Why do I feel this compulsive need to abandon myself in hopes of making someone else happy?
Yeah, so that they don't abandon me.
That's what it is.
Because I'm already abandoned. I abandoned myself, so I need someone to stick around.
Imagine if I just wouldn't have abandoned myself, I wouldn't even need to do this.
Right. But it's so, we can say it and we can laugh about it, but at the end of the day...
We do it all the time.
Yeah.
We do it all the time.
Well, and it's so hard to show up. If you're somebody who doesn't show up for themselves or has had a hard time showing up for themselves... That is way harder than manipulating someone else into doing it once in a while. I mean, it really is.
I mean, I think that's part of the work, right? Is just consistently like showing up for yourself, right? Be the hero of your own story. I think that's what I tell myself. Like, Jill, you are the hero of this story. Like, there is no other hero in this story but you. And by doing that and by being my own hero, I'm giving everyone else the space and the time and the energy to be their own hero too. I used to think like I really was put on this earth to be the hero in like 15 stories, and like that's fucking insane. You know, that's like some weird like grandiose narcissistic type of thinking. But really, like, my job is to be the hero of my story and let everybody else be the hero of theirs.
Right. And being the hero of other people's story, I think, you know, when we think about it, with a lot of people, like, we can be like, yes, I don't need to be the hero of your story. You can do it. You can do it. And then I think about when you have children and you're like, of course I'm supposed to be the hero of their story. Like, of course I am, right? Like, that's my job. I have to be the hero, right? And then just coming to the realization that no, you don't. And you have parents too. And do you want them to be the hero of your story, or do you want to be your own hero?
Exactly.
Like, what would you have wanted?
Like, I love my mother, but I don't, that would be really fucking weird if she was the hero of my story.
Right. Right. No. And it would cause codependency, right? Like, you wouldn't be able, it would be like, I'm still stuck to you. I need you to do these things for me, right? And I don't get to do things independently because you're the hero of my story. I can't do anything.
Yes. Whew.
Yeah, it's a lot of things.
It's a lot. People Pleasing by Jill and Amber. Should we pull a card?
Sure. Do you have a choice?
The card will be like, do not people please.
I know.
Put yourself first.
People pleasing is bad.
I don't really have a choice. No, pick whichever one you want.
All right, we're going to pull from the Angels and Ancestors Oracle deck, which we've pulled from before. So hopefully this isn't your first deep breath of the day, but let's take a deep breath in and release. And we can set the intention today that we will receive exactly what we needed today from this podcast and this card reading to help us on our journey of not people pleasing, and instead, what can we call it? Personal pleasing. I mean, that sounds a little X-rated,
but but for real,
yeah.
Are you gonna please others or please yourself?
Yep. And sometimes, well, most of the time, if you're making yourself happy, it makes other people happy too.
So true.
But sometimes we don't see it as much. So, well, there we go. We got the Fire Guardian, which is ignite your passions. And so to me, as we're talking about people pleasing, this really speaks to the fact that if you don't have anything that you're passionate about, or you're not igniting that, you know it, but you're not willing to set fire to it. And we know if we set fire to it and we start moving forward with our passions, then externally people are going to notice, like, hey, look at that. Like, she really enjoys that. If you're not willing to do that, right, then you're just kind of doing that people-pleasing piece where you are becoming what everybody else wants to do and nobody knows what it is that truly lights you up.
Yes.
Right? And so with the Fire Guardian, I think, you know, it's saying make sure that you are expressing those passions, that you are holding space for those things that you love to do.
Yes.
Opposed to what everyone else would like you to love to do because it serves their purpose, right?
I love that. Yeah. And just if you're spending less time worrying about and pleasing everyone around you, you probably are going to have more time to pour into yourself and to explore what you want to do.
Absolutely.
Well, happy week, everybody. And we'll catch you next time.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. We would be honored if you would like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, be well. Thank you for listening to another episode of Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. We would be honored if you would like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, be well.